Hello everyone. In this session, we want to talk about DNS, Dynamic Host Resolution. In our previous session, we talked about DHCP, and we said that the DHCP server needs to give out IP addresses and other configuration information to the clients on the network in order for them to communicate. We also need DNS information. You need DNS information to resolve the host name to IP address. Now, when the user wants to find a shared folder on the network, or when the user wants to connect to a website, the user does not type an IP address. The user types either the name of the website, or to access a folder on the network, the user will click on that folder or file to connect to that folder on the network. The user will remember the name rather than the IP address. And how DNS works is that DNS will convert that name to an IP address. The DNS component is really a database, and this database has a list of host names and the equivalent IP addresses. Now, DNS consists of three sections or three parts. Basically, you have the DNS namespace, you have name servers, and you have resolvers. DNS is defined as a tree-structured namespace in which each branch of the tree identifies a domain. In the example that we see here, we have at the top a root domain, which is a dot, which we don't actually write in the DNS address. Then you have your top level domain, which would be your .net, your .com, .org, .gov. And then you have your second level domain, which is a domain that you as a network administrator would create. When you are promoting your server to a domain controller, you're asked to give a name. And you give that name. If you give the name Contoso, well, that will be your second level domain name. And then you might want to create some subdomains. For example, you want to create West domain as a child of Contoso, South domain as a child of Contoso, and East domain as a child of Contoso. So we have the namespace being west.south.east.contoso.com. Now the namespace can be divided into what we call zones. So for the West domain, you can create a zone. For the South domain, you can create a zone. For the East domain and for the Contoso domain. And what the zone does is it collects the resource records. That means the records that contain the host name, the IP address, and other information for that particular zone. So if I create a zone in West domain, it means that this zone will contain only the resource records that pertain to specifically to West domain. So we might have the West zone, the South zone, and the East zone within our namespace. But each portion of that namespace will have a name server, and that server is going to be authoritative for that particular zone. So again, rather than storing all the records for the entire namespace on each DNS server only stores the records for a specific portion of the namespace. And that DNS server within the portion of the namespace is authoritative for the portion of the namespace that corresponds to the record stored on that DNS server. We also have what we call resolvers, another part or component of the DNS. Almost all the computers and applications in your network are clients of the domain name system. Now, the server to which the client makes the request is called the DNS resolver. And you have to configure the DNS information in the DHCP scope so that the clients know which server is a DNS server. So the resolver then will generate queries. When your client computer makes a request, then the resolver will send that request to the DNS server. And the client knows the DNS server because, remember, in your scope options for DHCP, you would have put in the IP address of the DNS server. And once that resolver gets the query, that resolver will send your query to a DNS server, and that DNS server will either give you back an answer or tell you where you can find that answer. Let us look at this diagram to see how DNS works. So this is you're the user, and you want to access Microsoft.com. So your computer makes a request, you type Microsoft.com in your browser window, and your request goes to the DNS server by your provider. Your ISP provider will have a DNS server that will resolve names. If that DNS server did not have the information, it will say, well, let me send your request to another server on the network, which might be the root name server. If that server doesn't have the information, then your query will go to the .com server. And if that .com server does not have the information that you need, then your information will go to the Microsoft.com, which would be the name server for Microsoft. Microsoft.com will have the name Microsoft.com. So Microsoft.com name server will send the information back to your client's computer so that you'll be able to successfully log on to Microsoft.com. Now, if you are dealing with a DNS server within your local network, you might only want to resolve names on your network. When you make a query, that query will go to your local DNS server, and the local DNS server will search its database to see if it has that name that you're looking for, if it has the IP address for that name. And if it has that name, it will then send the IP address back to you so that you'll be able to contact that particular client on the network. Let us go back a bit and look at the zones again. We have the domain name being Contoso, and within Contoso we have west, south, and east. We also have the contoso zone. So within the contoso zone, you will have resource records, host names and IP addresses, and other information for contoso. Then you're going to have another set of records for west, because you will have a west zone. You will have another set of records for south, because you will have a south zone. You will have another set of records for east, because you will have an east zone. Now, what you can do is you can have a DNS server on the zone, on the domain with the zone, and that DNS server will be authoritative for that zone, meaning that the DNS server is responsible for resolving the records within that zone. In our next session, we want to go and look at creating zones, and we want to specifically look at an Active Directory integrated zone, which is a zone that is created within Active Directory. This is the end of this session, and I want to thank you for listening.